Okay, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, I think those on TBCM will be able to see us live. I was not able to put it live to MSBS and DBV. So now we will have our regular speaker, a very known speaker, veteran speaker from our point of view. And let me introduce to you our brother Fong, and he's going to share with us his Dhamma sharing today. Okay, over to you, brother Fong.
Thank you, Brother Ding Huat, for the kind introduction. Before I proceed, short puja. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Today's topic is on the work. And over the past few months, we have been slowly going through the Chanki Sutta that points the step-by-step way of selecting a possible enlightened teacher and evaluating the teacher, listening to the teacher, and so on. So today, the beginning portion of this morning sharing will have a short recap of what we covered the last few months, and we proceed with the Chanki Sutta. And the key points will be putting the spotlight on and uprooting our defilements. Of course, the one sharing is not going to solve the issue. We have still to do the work. Now, in the early days, after the Buddha taught the first and second sermon, and nearby he was able to teach another group of renunciants, and the picture on the bottom right shows the scene where the Buddha sends off the first 60 enlightened disciples. And as recorded in the Dutiya Marapasa Sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 4, Sutta number 5, as also recorded in the Vinaya Pitaka, Mahabhaga in the Vinaya Pitaka, this particular scene in which the Buddha is documented as having said, at one time, the Buddha was staying near Varanasi in the deer park at Disipatana. That's where the Buddha gave the first and second sermon. The Buddha said this: monks, I am freed from all snares, both human and divine. You are also freed from all snares, human and divine. Wander forth, monks, for the welfare and happiness of the people, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, happiness of gods and humans. Let not two go by one road. So clearly, the areas which I've underlined in the center portion of the Buddha's narrative is that he encouraged the monks, the enlightened, the first 60 enlightened arahats, enlightened disciples of his, to wander off. Why? Out of compassion for the world. And what is this teaching and the sharing is all about? Is for our welfare, our happiness, our benefit. So clearly, the Dhamma Vinaya, or what today we call Buddhism, is actually for our welfare, our happiness, our benefit. And the sutta continues. Teach the Dhamma that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, meaning and well phrased, and reveal a spiritual practice that's entirely full and pure. There are beings with little dust in their eyes. They'll decline because they haven't heard the teaching. There will be those who understand the teaching. Now, the last paragraph here is of significance, mentioning there are beings with little dust in their eyes. Now, that is to say that many, many beings have much dust in their eyes. So it is not a fact that everyone will be able to understand the message of the Buddha. But there will be some beings who can understand what the Buddha is teaching. And of course, they will decline if they don't get a chance to learn or hear the teachings. So this is an encouragement by the Buddha as given in the what they call the painting at the bottom also, another scene where the Buddha sends off the first 60 arahats. Now we start off with an important advice, because we have been talking about spiritual advices and so on. Now, going quickly to the Sigala or the Sigalovada Sutta, you have this artistic rendition of the 6 directions, which many are familiar. We have the Buddha encouraging us to look at the east, comprising parents and children, the south, teachers and pupils, the west, husband and wife, the north, friends and companions, and pointedly, zenith, that means above our head, spiritual guides and us. And the next few pages, we'll be talking about spiritual guides and us. And to complete the 6 directions, we have below us, nadir, employer and employees. So what are the relationships between all these various groups? But we are concentrating on the zenith, spiritual guides and us. Now, the Buddha said in the Sigalovada Sutta from the Tika Nikaya, Sutta number 31, a gentleman should serve spiritual guides as the upper quarter in 5 ways. By loving deeds of body, deeds of speech, deeds of mind, by not turning them away at the gate, by providing them with material needs. And number 5, of course, is important because it was a custom in those days during the Buddha's time that renunciants did not work in the sense of work the land or do business to earn money and all that. And it's left to the community to provide material needs. Number 4 and number 5 is important. But we also should be serving them by loving deeds of body, speech, and mind. Now, this is from the layperson's point of view. But what about the duties of a renunciant, a spiritual guide towards us? And here the Buddha, the Sutta continues. Spiritual guides served by a gentleman in these 5 ways show compassion to him in 6 ways. They keep him from doing bad. They support him in doing good. They think of him with kindly thoughts. They teach him what he does not know. They clarify what he's already learned. They explain the path to heaven. So clearly, this particular portion, especially number 6, explain the path to heaven. Here, talking about the Buddha encouraging the spiritual guides to teach about gaining enlightenment, but at least for the lay people to be able to find way to go into higher planes of existence, heaven. Of course, those who can understand more, then probably can get out of the cycle of birth and death, samsara. So this page contains the duties of spiritual guides to lay people like us. And what is this path that we are talking about? And this slide is very familiar to most audiences. I keep on showing the right-hand picture of a path. Although a nice path, a laid out path, it is step by step, but the path is symbolic of the issue that it brings us from where we are standing right now, when looking at the path, to a destination. So path leads on, but a path is not to be looked on, is to be walked on, is to be practiced, is to be used. So this path brings us to where? What does it do for us? It makes us more noble. It changes our character. So this noble eightfold path taught by the Buddha clearly transforms us from our existing character to a more noble character. So for Buddhists or practitioners or those who adhere to this Dhamma Vinaya taught by the Buddha, you think that by going to the temple, then you pray, you are walking the path. That is not true. Path is to do with deliberate practices. And if anyone is thinking just by praying you can get solace, well, think again, because the path ennobles us, it transforms us. So if by learning about what the Buddha taught is just to gain favors from the Buddha, that is wrong understanding. You have, by walking the path, we are working on changing our character, improving our character. So what are the steps? There are 8. Now, it is not a noble 8 path, but 8-fold, because all 8 factors within this path reinforce, support each other. So they interact. Although we might focus on speech or perfect action or perfect livelihood, all the other factors on the path help come in to support. But this path is interesting. It starts off with perfect view or understanding, or in some books they call it right view or right understanding. So with getting that understanding right, all the other 7 are in line. So there are many ideas or courses offered by psychologists and various companies that talk about, oh, we'll teach you mindfulness. Mindfulness is good for you. But the question you should be asking is, what kind of mindfulness? And some may introduce mindfulness as, oh, this is taught by the Buddha back in India in those days. But the issue is they didn't start with right understanding. They started with mindfulness. So mindfulness, there is perfect mindfulness or right mindfulness. There's also wrong mindfulness. So if you don't get the understanding right, you will very likely practice wrong mindfulness. So beware of these commercial programs that teach mindfulness. And they claim to be taught by the Buddha. The Buddha didn't teach mindfulness. The Buddha taught right mindfulness. That is the difference. Now, for lay people, it is very, very important here, not just lay people, even for monks. So in this Punya Kiriya Vatu Sutta from the Iti Buddhaka, the Buddha says, monks, there are these 3 grounds for making merit. Now, interestingly, in this particular sutta, the Buddha was talking to monks, not lay people. So monks need merit also. So monks, there are these 3 grounds for making merit. What 3? Giving, ethical conduct, and meditation are all grounds for making merit. Here the Pali, which I have a bigger font and underline, Dana Mayang, Sila Mayang, and Bhavana Mayang. Or in short form, for the rest of us, Dana, Sila, Bhavana, giving, moral conduct or virtuous conduct, and meditation. These are the 3 grounds for making merit. And the Buddha continued in this particular sutta. Now, why is merit or punya very important? Well, it is the fuel or currency that makes our coming life, this life, and in future lives more comfortable. Doors open, okay, for practice of Dhamma, and not just that, but our relationships with our family, our friends, our community, our quality of living, and so on. Okay, so all this merit is the fuel, the currency, which allows us to have a good life as well as a spiritual life. Now, just to quote another area which the Buddha also emphasized in Dhammapada verse number 16, the doer of good rejoices here and hereafter. He rejoices in both the worlds. He rejoices and exalts, recollecting his own pure deeds. So this is another aspect of doing good. That, of course, covers things like giving as well as good moral conduct. It has implications here and now and the hereafter. And there are many, many other suttas and advices, including Dhammapada verses, where the Buddha talks about this aspect. Now, back to the Chanki Sutta. Just a quick recollection. Now, here is the Buddha talking to a lay person called Bharavaja about the topic of searching for spiritual guides and awakening. So Bharavaja, take the case of a monk living supported by a town or village. A householder, or lay people like us, or their child approaches and scrutinizes them for 3 kinds of things. Notice the word scrutinizes, which means we do not blindly accept the words from supposed monks, mendicants, renunciants, or supposedly what we, the common people, rest in society will call holy people or religious people. Here, the Buddha says, the householder or a child approaches and scrutinizes them for 3 kinds of things. And what are these things? Things that arouse greed, things that provoke hatred, things that promote delusion. So which means many of these monastics or so-called alleged holy people, some people may declare themselves holy, or they dress in the conventional holy garb. But we have to scrutinize them. Do they have greed? Do they have hatred and delusion in their minds? It would be good if you can read their minds, but normally we can't. We are not that well developed. So we have to observe them. In other sharings in the previous months, I've introduced you to the Jatila Sutta, where the Buddha talks about how we get to know so and so is holy or enlightened, how to evaluate. We have to observe them. We have to hang around them for a long time. So for that particular message and elaboration, please go to previous videos on this. So the sutta continues. Does this venerable have any qualities that arouse greed? Such qualities that, were their mind to be overwhelmed by them, they might say that they know, even though they don't know, or that they see, even though they don't see, or that they might encourage others to do what is for their lasting harm and suffering. And notice the ... The sutta continues, which I will not elaborate because I've covered that in the previous months. Now, quickly summarizing the three main areas initial areas where the Buddha advises us to scrutinize an alleged holy person. Now, scrutinizing them in this way, they see that they are purified of qualities that arouse greed. That is, they pass the test. Because some do not pass the test, then of course we reject them. But if they pass the test, they are purified of qualities that arouse greed. Scrutinize them in this way, they see that they are purified of qualities that provoke hate. Scrutinizing them in this way, they see that they are purified of qualities that promote delusion. So clearly, especially if holy persons declare that they are enlightened, they are awakened, then we can see by their physical actions and what they say, even though we cannot read their minds, we can see whether they have show qualities that arouse greed, provoke hatred, or promote delusion. If they pass all these tests, after they have claimed that they are enlightened or have some degree of high level of wisdom, then we move on to the next step as advised in the Chanki Sutta. Next, they place faith or confidence in them. The Pali word, which many Buddhists are familiar, is saddha. Now, faith is a two-edged sword because there's such thing called blind faith. So I do not prefer the translation of saddha to be faith. Saddha is better rendered as confidence. Why? Well, you have to earn my confidence in you. You have to show me that you behave properly, you say things and act properly. So confidence is earned, but faith can be blind. So there's a danger. So we do not encourage blind faith. After all, the beginning of this sutta, the Buddha talks about scrutinizing. Definitely, there's no place for blind faith in the Dhamma. So they place confidence in these individuals after scrutinizing them for greed, hatred, and delusion. Now, when the faith has arisen, they approach the teacher and they pay homage. Pay homage is not praying to a teacher, but pay respect. Okay, depending on the cultures. In Indian culture, we pay homage. In Western culture, we may just shake hands and so on. But after that, we actively listen. We hear the teachings. We remember the teachings of this particular teacher. Okay, we actively listen, not daydreaming listening, and then we listen actively. We hear the teachings. We remember the teachings. Why do we remember? Why? Because this sutta is delivered during the Buddha's time. There was no digital recorders, handphones, no paper for writing. So the only way they can, keep the information provided by a teacher is by memorizing, literally, verbatim, what the teacher said. So in other words, they're putting the notes or the book into their minds. That is why you have to remember the teachings. But after you remember the teachings, what do you do with that? The sutta continues. Reflect on their meaning. Accept them after consideration. So just because you remember the teachings, it doesn't mean you accept them. It is just putting the book in their mind. After that, you reflect on their meaning, which means effectively you're scrutinizing their teachings, whether it is good, bad, harmful, and so on. You reflect on the meaning and only accept them after your consideration. So again, consideration in a way is scrutinizing. You are still scrutinizing, not just of the character of the potential teacher or alleged holy person, but you are also evaluating the quality and the significance of the teaching. Now, we will come back to the Janki Sutta later. Here, I move on to something which we are very, very familiar. Now, someone with 5 qualities is able to enter the sure path. Now, with regards to skillful qualities when listening to the true teaching. Here, I go back a little bit to the active listening portion. Now, entering the sure path is talking about the Noble Eightfold Path. So here the Buddha talks about what 5? How do we listen to teachings? We don't disparage the talk, the speaker, or themselves. They listen with unscattered and unified mind. In more conventional terms, we pay attention, we don't daydream. They apply the mind rationally. So someone with these 5 qualities is able to enter the sure path with regards to skillful qualities when listening to the true teaching. Now, this is just one sutta. There are many, many other suttas that go deeper into this aspect and elaborate more on these 5 qualities. Now, moving on, something which we are very, very familiar. When a person teaches us something or introduces ideas to us, how do we handle ideas? And many Buddhists will be familiar with this particular sutta, the Kalama Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya Book of 3. So here, the Kalama says, the Buddha advised the Kalamas, don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, agreement through pondering views, by probability, or by the thought. This contemplative is our teacher. Now, number 10 is quite significant. Now, many Buddhists will say, oh, the Buddha is my teacher. But the Buddha himself said in the Kalama Sutta, okay, do not accept what the Buddha says just because he is your teacher. You accepted him as a teacher. You should evaluate further. You should scrutinize even what the Buddha says further. And of course, if you want to scrutinize, how do you scrutinize? How do you judge? How do you evaluate the content of the teaching? Well, here the Buddha says, when you know for yourselves. Now, this aspect is very important. When you know for yourselves. Now, to the Kalamas, they had just met the Buddha. The Buddha had not taught the 4 Noble Truths or the Noble Eightfold Path to them. They are unfamiliar with the Buddha. So, when the Buddha says, when you know for yourselves, this is clearly an exhortation to the Kalamas to use their gray matter, use their head, use their experience, or what today we commonly use them, use your common sense. Okay. So when you know for yourself that these qualities or that has been taught by so and so are unskillful, these qualities are blameworthy, these qualities are criticized by the wise, these qualities when adopted and carried out lead to harm and to suffering, then you should abandon them. So you should reject such teachings. So when you know for yourself that these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise, these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to welfare and to happiness, then you should enter and remain in them. After all, we are going to a holy person to learn something, so that when you carry out, when you practice such teachings, it supports your welfare and your happiness. That is the whole intent. We're not talking about enlightenment yet. We're talking about teachings that support our welfare and happiness, and not just ours, but our close ones and our community. So using our common sense, we should evaluate. This is the first evaluation or scrutinizing step which we should apply. There is no such thing as blind faith in Buddhism. It is always scrutinizing, checking the teachings, and so on. Now, continuing with the the Janki Sutta. Just now, we talk about active listening, hear the teachings, remember the teachings, and with the Kalama Sutta and another sutta on the 5, we should reflect on the meeting, accept them after consideration. But after that, if you have accepted them, what do? Then enthusiasm springs up. They make an effort, weigh up and persevere. Now, this is a stage of once you accept the teachings of a certain person, in this case, maybe the Buddha, you should arouse up enthusiasm to do what? To make an effort in implementing the advice of these holy people. Okay, make an effort, weigh up and persevere. Because with any training, self-training, failure is normal. In the beginning of the start of an untrained session, what happened? It may be 100% failure. But with practice and perseverance and understanding of the teachings taught by this holy person, you try and try again. What happens? You begin to make inroads. You may have 0.1% success, and slowly that percentage grows. And hopefully in time, you will have crossed the 50-50 border, 50% failure and 50% success, and moving towards 100% successful in the practice as advised by the teacher. Now, on the aspect of 4 right efforts, we are talking about perseverance and putting effort. So in this particular sutta, as Savatthi, where the sutta was given, that the Buddha said, monks, there are these 4 right efforts. What for? Is when a monk generates enthusiasm, tries, makes an effort, exerts the mind, and strives so that bad, unskillful qualities don't arise. That means for the monk, such unskillful or unwholesome qualities that have not existed in his mind does not get a chance to take foothold in that person's mind. And next, they generate enthusiasm, try, make an effort, exert the mind, and strive so that bad, unskillful qualities that have arisen are given up. So clearly the first one was, if you don't have such bad characters, bad qualities, unskillful qualities in you, don't let them take a foothold. And the second one, which is at the bottom of this page, is that whatever unskillful qualities that have taken hold of you, you have been practicing, that are part of your character, you should start to work on giving them up. Okay, get rid of such unskillful qualities within your character. So these are the first 2 with respect to unskillful qualities. They generate enthusiasm, try, make an effort, exert the mind, and strive so that skillful qualities arise. So which means skillful qualities that are not part of your character, okay, you should learn such skillful qualities and bring into your character, your life. And the next one, they generate enthusiasm, try, make an effort, exert the mind, and strive so that skillful qualities that have arisen, remain, are not lost, but increase, mature, and are completed by development. These are the 4 right efforts. So on this page is clearly about skillful qualities. The top one is about qualities which are not part of your character, that you need to bring it into your character and cultivate them. And the bottom portion, the 4th advice here, is that for skillful qualities that you may have, however, whatever stage of development, it may be very weak, just started, you may be quite mature or whatever, you should ensure that remain, are not lost, they increase and mature. And the key thing is completed by development. You should practice them until they are perfect. So these are the 4 right efforts found in the sutta from Samyutta Nikaya, chapter number 45, sutta number 1. So in the same way, a monk who develops and cultivates these 4 right efforts slants and slopes and inclines towards extinguishment. Here, inclines towards extinguishment means inclines towards enlightenment. Okay, notice this last paragraph at the bottom, I had 2 dots starting before the word in the same way. So there's still a lot of things mentioned in the sutta. I encourage you to read the sutta in completely. But what it mentions is that these 4 right efforts, as you work on them, it makes your character slant, slope towards enlightenment on your way to achieving it. Now, this is yet another sutta which I've covered many months back, the Ambabalatika Rahulovada Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 61. This is a sutta in which the Buddha was teaching his son who had renounced and become a novice. young Rahula. So how does one check on deeds of body, speech, and mind? Here the Buddha was teaching his very young son, about approximately 7 years old. And the instruction is very, very simple. And it shows from this particular sutta perspective, and there are, of course, other suttas that shows different perspective, which later this morning I will share also, how reflection is very important. So here in this particular sutta, which was given in the near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove. So now at the time, Venerable Rahula was staying at this place, Ambabalatika. Then in the late afternoon, the Buddha came out of retreat and went to Ambabalatika to see Venerable Rahula. What do you think, Rahula? What is the purpose of a mirror? And Rahula replied, it's for checking your reflection, sir. So the Buddha is leading Rahula step-by-step considerations of the Dhamma practice. In the same way, deeds of body, speech, and mind should be done only after repeated checking. And the Pali word here used, pacha vekitatva, having reflected, having considered, having reviewed, having contemplated. So these are the aspects of this particular Pali word underlying in the Pali portion in italics in this verse. So when you want to act with the body. Now, when is before you act. So before you should be considering. When you want to act with the body, you should check on that same deed. Does this act with the body that I want to do lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? Is it unskillful with suffering as its outcome and result? If while checking in this way, you know, this act with the body that I want to do leads to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both. It's unskillful with suffering as its outcome and result. To the best of your ability, Rahula, you should not do such a deed, as the Buddha advised. But if while checking in this way, you know, this act with the body that I want to do doesn't lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both, is skillful with happiness as its outcome and result, then Rahula, you should do such a deed. Now, while you are acting with the body, you should check on that same act. Now, earlier portion was before you do, and this portion we talk about while you are acting with the body. You should check on that same act. Does this act with the body that I'm doing lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? And notice, hurting both, ... The evaluation is the same as before. It continues. And while you're doing, you should evaluate. And after you have completed those actions, after you've acted with the body, you should check on that same act. Does this act with the body that I've done lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? And the evaluation is as above, but before you start acting. So before, during, and after action with the body, there is constant self-reflection or self-scrutiny. Now here, the Buddha moves on, because earlier at the beginning of this Ambabalatika Rahulovada Sutta, the Buddha talks about reflecting or evaluating actions by body, speech, and mind. And now we move on to the aspect of speech. So when you want to act with speech, that means when you want to say something, you should check on that same day. Does this act of speech that I want to do lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? And the evaluation continues, like in the action by the body. So while you want to act with speech, you should check on the same deed. So while you're speaking also, you should be fully mindful of such aspects. And after you have spoken, after you've acted with speech, you should check on the same deed. So before, during, and after speaking, there is constant checking whether there is any, whether it leads to hurting yourself, others, or hurting both, and so on. Whether it's skillful or unskillful. If it is unskillful, then if you're speaking it, then you should immediately stop. If you have already spoken, then you should make amends, and so on. That was speech. Now we're talking about actions by the mind, the thoughts that arise. When you want to act with the mind, you should check on that same deed. Does this act of mine that I want to do lead to hurting myself, hurting others, or hurting both? That was before you allow the thought to dwell in the mind. While you're thinking the thought, you should evaluate it also. And after you have thought the thought, you should evaluate also. So before, during, and after. Now, all the ascetics, the Buddha said, ascetics and Brahmins of the past, future, and present, who purified their physical, verbal, and mental actions, do so after repeated checking. So, Rahula, you should train yourself like this. I will purify my physical, verbal, and mental actions after repeated checking. This is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, Venerable Rahula was happy with what the Buddha said. So this aspect of the sutta is talking about repeated checking, repeated reflection. This is an aspect of right effort as summarized in the Chanki Sutta earlier. Now, in the end, we are responsible for our action. In this particular sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya Book of 5, Sutta number 57, the Buddha says, I am the owner of my deeds or actions and heir to my deeds. It means you inherit these actions. Deeds are my womb. Why? Your actions by body, speech, and mind determine your future birth. Okay, what you are born as, to which family you are born into, and so on. My relative. So when you're born in a particular family, who are your immediate brothers, sisters, parents, your wider family circle? And if you want to stretch it further, even who are your friends and what kind of community you will stay in. My refuge. Refuge is something which we go to for shelter in times of calamity. If it's a hot sun, we want an umbrella or go to a shade. If it's raining, we want to have an umbrella or go to a nearby building to keep dry and so on. So refuge is something that protects us. And your deeds reflect your refuge. Why? If you're seeking happiness and all that, if your deeds are wholesome, what happens? You can find refuge easily in people who advise you what you can do to increase your welfare, your happiness, to your benefit, and so on. So in the end, I shall be the heir of whatever deeds I do, whether good or bad. So this is yet another sutta. Notice I quote many suttas, and frequently in different villages, people ask different questions. The Buddha was what they call elaborate similar advice. There is a lot of repeat in different, but from different points of view and so on, because of the audience the Buddha was speaking to. Now, here is another sutta on self-reflection. Earlier, the Ambabalatika Rahulo Vada, we talk about repeated checking or repeated reflection. In this Satita Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya Book of 10, Sutta number 51, here the Buddha at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's monastery, the Buddha addressed the monks. Monks. And the Buddha said this, monks, if a monk isn't skilled in ways of another's mind, then they should train themselves. Now, skill in ways of another's mind, which means you cannot read another person's mind. So you have to develop another way of checking and so on. I shall be skilled in the ways of my own mind. And how is a monk skilled in the ways of their own mind? Suppose there was a woman or man who was young, youthful, fond of adornments, and they check their own reflection in a clean, bright mirror or a clear bowl of water. If they see any dirt or blemish there, they'll try to remove it. Now, in a way, this is very commonsensical because even today, we are always looking in the mirror as given in the image at the bottom left. But if they don't see any dirt or blemish there, they are happy with that as they have got all they wish for. How fortunate that I'm clean. So they don't have any pimples or acne or whatever else on the face. This is common. In the same way, checking is very helpful for amongst skillful qualities. So again, another way of saying self-reflection, self-checking. Here, the Buddha gives a long list. Am I covetous or not? Covetous is extreme greed. When you see somebody driving a Lamborghini past you, a person with covetous tendencies would want to take over, hijack, steal, or rob that Lamborghini so that the Lamborghini is his. That is such the aspect of extreme greed. So am I covetous or not? Am I often malicious or not? Am I overcome with dullness and drowsiness or not? Am I restless or not? Am I doubtful or not? Am I often irritable or not? Am I often corrupted in mind or not? Am I often disturbed in body or not? Am I often energetic or not? Am I often immersed in samadhi or not? So these are the various points of reflection for the monastics as advised by the Buddha in this particular sutta. So this is an aspect of right effort, but at least try to identify your own defilements, your own what they call failings in character, and so on. Now, suppose that upon checking, a monk knows this. I am often covetous, malicious, overcome with dullness and drowsiness, restless, doubtful, irritable, defiled in mind, disturbed in body, lazy, and not immersed in samadhi. So in order to give up these bad, unskillful qualities, they should apply intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance. And notice I have rendered in yellow, mindfulness and situational awareness. Here, mindfulness and situational awareness, the Pali word is sati for mindfulness and sampajanya for situational awareness. At the bottom of the page, these two terms, sati, sampajanya, translated as situational awareness, clear comprehension in some texts, discrimination, circumspection, clarity of consciousness. So in this higher level of practice, these need to be applied. But the key thing is you should apply intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance. Okay, and of course, one of the tools to help you to get rid of these defilements is that of mindfulness and situational or awareness or clear comprehension. Now, suppose your clothes or head were on fire. This picture is not an accident. It's a special model, especially what they call used to show an artistic trend, a wedding dress on fire. So the model was not hurt. Suppose your clothes or head were on fire. In order to extinguish it, you apply intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness. Obviously, if someone is on fire, definitely, or if you are on fire, you will take what we will call today immediate action, instantaneous action. So this is what the Buddha talks about: intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance. Of course, using your mindfulness and clear comprehension to get rid of this, what they call unskillful quality. That is, in this case, the model's dress on fire. In the same way, in order to give up those bad, unskillful qualities, that the mendicant should apply intense enthusiasm. But suppose that upon checking, a monk knows this: I am often content, kind-hearted, free of dullness and drowsiness, calm, confident, loving, pure in mind, undisturbed in body and energetic, and immersed in samadhi. Grounded in these skillful qualities, they should practice meditation further to end the defilements. So clearly, this is something for the monastics to work on, and hopefully they have more of these episodes of skillful qualities, and so that they can continue until they end all the defilements to gain enlightenment. So that was the Satchitu Sutta. And of course, the practice goes on. And here in the Anapanasati Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 118, here I do not intend to give a detailed explanation or the whole sutta. You are encouraged to read the Anapanasati Sutta in the via your suitable websites, and you can find elaborations where various monastics, achans, venerables, sayadaws, and so on, who have you can elaborate this practice in greater detail. Here, I just give you a brief introduction. Now, the Anapanasati Sutta, meaning mindfulness of breathing. Not just breathing, but breathing in and breathing out. Ana, in, pana, out. Mindfulness of breathing in and breathing out. Now, in this particular sutta is quite interesting. Monks, the Buddha said, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. Now, mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. Now, what does this fulfilling the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation mean? In the Pali, in yellow and underlined, satipatthane. So this clearly refers to the elsewhere a greater elaboration on the Satipatthana Sutta or the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So notice the Anapanasati Sutta starts off by talking about encouraging the monastics to develop mindfulness, and it is very fruitful and beneficial. And the Buddha continues by saying that once you have fulfilled that, it develops the Satipatthana practice also. Now, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation or Satipatthana, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 awakening factors. Now, 7 awakening factors. That is Satta Bojjhanga. Satta meaning 7, Bojjhanga meaning awakening factors. Now, 7 awakening factors. And the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. Here in Pali, in larger font, Vijja Vimutti. Vijja means knowledge, and Vimutti is to do with freedom or liberation. So this, in a way, on this page, it clearly shows gives an outline of the step-by-step things a practitioner needs to do to gain knowledge and freedom. In other words, enlightenment. So Anapanasati Sutta, in a way, summarizes a lot of these things, and the Buddha alludes to, in other suttas, elaborates in greater detail these various aspects. But within Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha already gives preliminary instructions on what you should do. And how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? Is when a monk, gone to a wilderness, to the root of a tree, to an empty hut, sits down, cross-legged, sets their body straight, and establishes mindfulness in front of them. Just mindful, they breathe in. Mindful, they breathe out. Breathing in heavily, they know. This translation uses the word heavily. Other translations use the word when breathing in long. Some people breathe in with a long breath. They know I'm breathing in heavily or long. Breathing out heavily, they know I'm breathing out heavily. When breathing in lightly, they know I'm breathing in lightly. Breathing out lightly, they know I'm breathing out lightly. Now they practice like this. I'm breathing in, experiencing the whole body. I'm breathing out, experiencing the whole body. I'm breathing in, stilling the physical process. I'm breathing out, stilling the physical process. I'm breathing in, experiencing rapture. I'm breathing out, experiencing rapture. I'm breathing in, experiencing bliss. I'm breathing out, experiencing bliss. I'm breathing in, experiencing mental processes. I'm breathing out, experiencing mental processes. I'm breathing in, stilling mental processes. I'm breathing out, stilling mental processes. I'll breathe in, experiencing the mind. I'll breathe out, experiencing the mind. I'll breathe in, gladdening the mind. I breathe out, gladdening the mind. I breathe in, immersing the mind in samadhi. I breathe out, immersing the mind in samadhi. I'll breathe in, freeing the mind. I'll breathe out, freeing the mind. I'll breathe in, observing impermanence. I'll breathe out, observing impermanence. I'll breathe in, observing fading away. I'll breathe out, observing fading away. I'll breathe in, observing cessation. I'll breathe out, observing cessation. I'll breathe in, observing letting go. I'll breathe out, observing letting go. So mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated in this way, is very fruitful and beneficial. And the sutta continues, for which I will not reproduce here. Please read the Anapanasati Sutta or go to various texts or videos of various accomplished meditators elaborating on this practice itself. Now here, the Buddha continues. And how is the mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so as to fulfill the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation? And how are the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so as to fulfill the 7 awakening factors? Notice there are ... The sutta talks about this aspect. And how are the 7 awakening factors developed and cultivated so as to fulfill knowledge and freedom? So that's how the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. So that was the Anapanasati Sutta. Now, in this particular sutta, the Nivarana Sutta from Samyutta Nikaya, chapter number 46, sutta number 38. Nivarana, made up of 2 words. Nivarana, meaning obstacles or hindrances. Nivarana means no more obstacles or no more hindrances. So the title here is called Without Obstacles. So in meditation, the Buddha says, monks, sometimes a noble disciple pays attention, applies the mind, concentrates wholeheartedly, and actively listens to the teaching. At such a time, the 5 hindrances are absent, and the 7 awakening factors are fully developed. Now, notice, pays attention, applies the mind. This is during a Dhamma talk, when the person actively listens to a Dhamma teaching and concentrates wholeheartedly, actively listens to the teaching. So while listening, even as long as the listener pays attention, applies the mind, and so on, the 5 hindrances are absent, and the 7 awakening factors are fully developed. And in the way, for those who have read other suttas, you will find that in many other situations, listeners in front of the Buddha often gain enlightenment just from listening alone, because the 5 hindrances absent, the 7 awakening factors have been fully developed while they were listening to the Dhamma talk. So what are the 5 hindrances that are absent? Here I give you the list. Sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. So these are the list of 5 hindrances, the 5 obstacles that prevent you from sitting still, from paying attention, and so on. Now, these are the 5 hindrances that are absent. And what are the 7 awakening factors that are fully developed? The awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity. So these are the 7 awakening factors. So it is possible that when a person pays attention during a Dhamma sharing and so on, the 5 hindrances become absent and the 7 awakening factors become fully developed. And it is possible for a listener to gain enlightenment while listening to the Dhamma talk. So these are the 7 awakening factors that are fully developed. Now, sometimes a noble disciple pays attention, applies the mind, concentrates wholeheartedly, and actively listens. So at such a time, the 5 hindrances are absent, and the 7 awakening factors are fully developed. So we come back to the Chanki Sutta again. So earlier, the lay person is encouraged to evaluate, to scrutinize a potential spiritual guide for whether there any greed, hatred, and delusion in the person's character. And after establishing that the person had this potential holy teacher does not have such, then you can place confidence in them, approach the teacher, pay homage, actively listen, hear the teachings, remember the teachings, reflect on their meaning, accept them after consideration. And then we cover this. Then enthusiasm springs up. They make an effort, weigh up, and persevere. And soon, with this persevering, they directly realize the ultimate truth and see it with penetrating wisdom. At this stage, the red box, that means the person gains enlightenment. Now, although we have covered many suttas, for some, in fact, some they may be difficult to remember all the points that I've given. Do go through this video again and refer to the suttas and read the suttas in total. As a quick summary, for those, for the many of us, Dhammapada verse 183, the Buddha says, Sabba papasa akaranang kusalasa upasampada sacitta paridapanang etang buddhana sasanang. That we should avoid all evil. We should do good. Purify your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. So if you remember nothing else at the earlier portion of this morning session, you should take home this particular advice by the Buddha and proceed with your practice. Saddhammo cirang titatu. May the good doctrine long endure. Sabbe satta sukhi hontu. May all beings be happy. Thank you for lending your ears.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Brother Ananda. He has given us a very comprehensive way. He has organized his talk so carefully. How to uproot all our defilements. He started off even very much earlier stage where the Buddha appointed the first 60 ambassadors of the Sasana to go in separate ways, to wander forth for the welfare, happiness, and out of compassion for the people. So he started off from the very beginning. He went through that, and then he went also, and he says that no two monks should go on the same path, meaning to say that everybody will have, so that the sadhana will have a wide range of coverage. He also covered a lot of advices for the lay people. He focused a lot on the lay people, teachings for the lay people, because Buddhism is not only for the spiritual well-being, it's also for the living well for the lay people. So he also reviewed about, he also stressed on the Buddhism as a practice. Pariyati patipati. So he says, the Buddhism is about patipati, practicing and knowing and practicing. Not about knowing with faith only. He does not advocate to blind faith. He says you don't go to the temple just to pai and then you bow down and knock your head against the floor. Well, that is not good enough. You must reflect on the teachings and put it to practice. And then this is my takeaway for him today also. So he spoke about the mindfulness, and mindfulness, about right mindfulness, not only mindfulness. The Buddha taught us right mindfulness, samma sati. So he focuses on that. Of course, I'm not going into detail, like what he said, refer to his talk again. You will understand. He reminded us again in Dhammapada 16 that says that we are the heir to all our deeds. We are the heir to our actions. We are the heir to all the karma that we create. So he reminded us again, these are all for the lay people. Lay people like us, we have got to be reminded. And he's really telling us how to uproot our defilements. He also quoted the Bharadwaja Sutta on the greed, hatred, and delusion, Chanki Sutta, and how to review, to scrutinize the teachings, which is very important. The Buddha has always said so. You come and listen, ehipasiko, and come and test these teachings. Not accept it blindly, he even quoted the Karama Sutta on this. So he has elaborated it in a very, very nice format for us to follow. Listen again to his teachings, and you will understand how he has rearranged all this. It's so beautiful, beautifully arranged, you know. He even spoke on the effort, the right effort, 4 right efforts, you know, what the effort we put in. Yeah. He spoke how to evaluate your actions. You know, how do we evaluate our actions? Sometimes we just think that we are right. We don't evaluate. Yeah. So he's reminding us to evaluate before we decide, before we do. During our decision, during the work being done, during the action being taken, and also after we have thought about it and after it's been done. So he has made it very clearly for us through body, speech, and mind. We must reflect. We must reflect all these things, because all this karma is all developed. All this karma is created through our body, speech, and mind, he says very clearly. And we must reflect on this body, speech, and mind during, before, during, and after. And of course, in conclusion, also, he has touched on the Satipatthana Anapanasati Sutta, you know, where he reminded us again through the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing. It can be very beneficial. And he reminded us something which I've always wanted to tell you all, and we always have been talking about. Not only through meditation that one can be enlightened, through even listening to the Dhamma, he says. How? He has explained to us in detail again, you know, something which many people don't explain. He says that through listening, you will develop, or rather, it will suppress the hindrances. You suppress all your hindrances that you have, the 5 hindrances that you have. And then when you suppress these hindrances, then you can cultivate the Bojjhanga, the Sati Bojjhanga, the 7 Bojjhangas. And that is how, when you reflect the Sati Bojjhangas, after having suppressed the hindrances, you cultivate the Bojjhanga, then you get enlightened. And that is a very big takeaway today. So with that, I think we thank him very much again. I will not go into much detail. So with that, I thank him again, Brother Fong. I think it was a wonderful, wonderful talk. And before we conclude, let us do some dedication. That we are also sometimes look for somebody to guide us, to help us to meet people like Brother Fong, you know, who makes life conducive, to understand the Dhamma very clearly. So that's why we do this merit kind of transference, so that our life become conducive. We meet the correct people, who can guide us the correct path. So we have spent about almost an hour and 15 minutes listening, chanting, and listening to Dhamma discussion this morning. And I'm sure our mind stayed focused. And when your mind is focused, it is free from the 3 poisons, free from greed, hatred, and delusion. And when our mind is free from greed, hatred, and delusion, that is when we accrue abundance of merits. And these merits we always dedicate to protective deva, so that they will continue to protect us. They continue to protect us with good health, longevity, success, happiness, prosperity, and above all, wisdom. Wisdom to continue to walk the Buddha's path. We will also reflect, recall to mind the names of our loved ones who are no more with us, wherever they may be, even those ancestors whom we have never met before. We hope that they are also reborn on the celestial planes, and they will rejoice in these merits, and will shower unto all of us here the choicest blessings and protection. However, sometimes these relatives of ours may need our merits to help them in their spiritual well-being. We hope that these merits can reach them and help them in their spiritual well-being. And our aspiration, as always, may we be blessed with company of the good and the wise always. May we not follow the ways of the foolish. May we be blessed with good friends and good teachers who can guide us along the path of the Dhamma until we reach our final liberation, Nibbana. Akasata ca bhummatta devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva cirang rakhantu loka sasanang ettavata ca amhehi sambadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo. Satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we hope to see you again next week. We will probably have Brother Go or Brother Casey Lee with us next week. So thank you very much.